The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Scout 6316, 8.8 for 6,000.
Got 6316, North Gulf Road, still maintain 3,000, I'm 1 for the right.
3,000, Scout 6316.
Redwood 811, still maintain 4,000, airport's open to Fox 1.
We take you higher and higher and higher. You feel it over and over again. We take you higher and higher and higher. You feel it over and over again.
6 over Carefly runway heading runway 5. Let's take off.
Check.
And we're ready for takeoff. Sit back, relax. It's time to travel with Cosmic Passport. Spaced Out Weekend presents Elizabeth Anglin's Cosmic Passport. A 1-hour warm-up of news, stories, thoughts, and ideas to captivate your mind. You can follow us at spacedoutradio.com.
Now 20 years have passed us by, and we look back and count the time. Burning like the summer sun when the world was young. As I lay staring from the ground, and 7 trumpets wait to sound.
And now, here's Our Lady of Flight, Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Weekend on spacedoutradio.com. This is Elizabeth Anglin, your host of Cosmic Passport, coming to you from Uncle Jimbo's cabin, that marvelous cabin that is as large or small as you want it to be. Tonight, floating in the relative northern heavens on the far left coast of North America, it is anchored with silvery tendrils of love to the southwest desert in New Mexico. We are so happy to be here tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about, tonight we're going to be fixing my microphone. And then we're going to talk about minor ghosts. I think the minor ghosts are messing with my microphone. I'm going to blame it on them. I'll be right back.
Meanwhile, somewhere deep in the other side of my cabin is Elizabeth Anglin. She is dealing with a microphone issue.
How's that?
That was perfect.
Am I still in a well?
No, you were perfect right after the well. You came out of the well, and then you were perfect. So
okay.
I'm going to go make tea and listen to you and your minor ghosts.
Okay. My minor ghosts who are messing with my microphone, because I live in a town of of ghost miners and other people in Madrid, New Mexico, which is a coal mining town in New Mexico. Well, before we talk to them and before they mess up my mic some more because they can be trickster ghosts, we are happy to be on the air, on terrestrial radio, on online radio. We're especially happy to be on the air 7 nights a week, coming to you live. We are also so thankful that we have listeners, and we love our listeners who are tuning in through Renegade Talk Radio in Las Vegas, UPRN 107.7 in New Orleans, Wolf Spirit Radio, the High Plains Radio Network, Forest Moon Paranormal, a very cool place to go. Listeners coming in to us from TuneIn and iTunes, we love you too. I hope that you'll join us on chat if this is your first night tuning in live. You can find a chat room at spacedoutradio.com, or if you want to become a space traveler, or space travelers if you have multiple personality disorder, you can join for $5 per month, less than a large latte at the coffee shop, and get into the chat room on Facebook. And you'll also receive other cool stuff like free books, swag, private interviews, a newsletter, and archives of all the spacedoutradio.com shows and much more. Now, I do apologize tonight because I have been out about walking around. It was a beautiful spring day here in Madrid, New Mexico. I think I picked up some early season pollen because all I can think is allergies. But so if I do that, don't take it personally. It just means I'm trying to breathe. And now let's go into our subject. Since I'm in Madrid, New Mexico, something very interesting has happened. Now, I am a spirit medium. I have been an evidential spirit medium since 1997. I became a physical medium, a healing medium, in 1994, and a remote viewer in 1996. So it's been more than, 20 years. Yeah, I guess 20 years that I've been doing this mediumship stuff. I have never, that I known of in my life, seen what appears to be a completely solid ghost. I've seen shadows. I've seen ghosts in my mind's eye who are very well formed. They can, because they're in the same space I'm in, they give me a very good picture of themselves, a lot of detail. I don't miss much about them. I've seen ghosts that have helped me play the piano, and in that I know that I can feel them, their shoulder against my shoulder, and I can hear what they're playing. I have had ghosts fix my electronics, or spirits, rather, fix my electronics. I have seen and heard of ghosts doing amazing feats of physicality. When a friend of mine died, when Dr. John Mack died in September of 2004, I heard about it just before I left work, the day after he died. And I was at work and somebody got my number there and called me and told me that he had passed. And I had this big bus ride to my car at the University of New Mexico. And if you work for the University of New Mexico Hospital, which I did at the time, I had to take a bus to my parking lot to get to my car. And I was in the back of the bus crying because I had just learned that he had died and he'd been hit by a car. And I get off the bus, and it is a dry spring day. Actually, it's a dry September day. The wind had been blowing. There's no water anywhere. It's the middle of the desert. It's hot. And right in front of the door of my car is a Gideon's Bible. And it's face downward and open. And it's covered with water in a pool of water. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm looking around for footprints or what could have left. Why would a Gideon's Bible be right in front of my car door? I have to pick it up in order to get in. I can't step where I need to. And why would it be covered with water when there's no water anywhere? All we have is wind and heat. And here is this wet, totally soaking wet Gideon's Bible. And so I pick it up and look at, and I have my thumb over the part of the Bible, the page that's open. And it's not John 2:13, it's like John 10:11 or John 10:13, something like that. But it's basically the passage that says, love your enemy as yourself because you are the same. But it was John. The Bible was open to John, and my friend John, I had just learned that he had passed. And so there's no way, there weren't other cars near my car. Somebody would have had to go up, throw a Bible out, put water all over it, and leave it there within the last 2 minutes of me coming up to my car, which I could see my car as I came across the parking lot from where the bus stopped, and there was nobody there. So something very physical happened that produced a wet Bible open to John on the day just after I learned that my friend John had passed away. That's a kind of physicality that is ghost or spirit, something that they can do, something that your loved ones can do if you are looking for a message. Sometimes it doesn't help to look for a message. I tend to get messages. My friend Dave, when he passed away, he fixed my car radio so that I could hear a station that played My Way, which is what he said was going to be his song at his memorial. So I find out that he dies. I have my cat in the hospital, a cat that he had taken care of. My friend Dave had taken care of my cat Simba, and Simba gets sick the same day that Dave dies, and nobody tells me that Dave has died until after I've taken Simba to the hospital. I get a phone call. It's a friend telling me that my friend Dave, who was terrified of water, has drowned in a pond, and he said he would never go in the water above his shins. And I just lose it. I just lose my stuff. And I call up the vet and I say, you know what? This is a kidney issue and a urinary tract infection, and you could give him one more bag of fluids and I'm coming to get him and take him home, and you better give me some antibiotics to treat the urinary tract infection. And no, I don't want to do anything else or have you do anything else to the cat. I'm bringing him home. I need him now. This is what happens when an animal communicator who does veterinary intuition really needs their cat. So I call him up and I say, I'm coming to pick up my cat. And this is what I want you to do. And I go to get in my little car. I have this little Hyundai, and the Hyundai is, it's like, looks like a little dolphin. It's a tiny little thing, and the radio has never worked. The woman I bought it from was in my spirit mediumship class, and she said, I'm sorry, the radio's never worked. It never worked for me either. And she goes, well, you can maybe get someone to fix it. I get in the car, and the radio's on, and the announcer is on, and he's announcing the song My Way. And My Way comes on, and I just lose it all over again because all of a sudden the radio works, and it's tuned to a station, believe it or not, that's about to play and is playing the song My Way, which my friend David said he always wanted playing for his memorial. So spirits can do that kind of thing. He was an astronomer, and right after that, they played Catch a Falling Star and When You Wish Upon a Star and One More Star song, and I got to listen to those while I went to pick up my cat, who I just, bullied the vet into saying, no, I know it's a kidney thing. Give me that, and I'll put him on kidney diet. Anyway, so that being said, one thing that had never happened, though, for me, even though I'd had these other physical events around spirits and ghosts, I had never seen until last week an actual physical ghost. And this is, I live on the main street in Madrid, the main drag, Route 14, the Turquoise Trail. And I was going out, it was dusk, and I was going out to my truck because I tend to go pick up my water because we drink bottled water here, before the store closes. And I was just going down to the store to pick up my water, and there's a man who is very tall, and he's wearing work clothes. He's wearing like a Dickies work clothes suit with a zipper. It's very loose on him. He's very tall. He's very thin. And he's walking down the street toward me. And his head is hanging really low. Like, I can't see exactly how tall he is because his head's hanging low. And I think by the time I get into my truck, he's going to need to pass behind me. So I get into my truck and I wait to watch him pass behind me. And he never does. And I wait a couple more seconds for him to come past the neighbor's house, pass behind me, and he doesn't do it. And there isn't anywhere for him to go from where he was unless he crossed the street, which I would see. There isn't anywhere for him to go unless he went in the neighbor's house or, there's just nowhere for him to go if he doesn't pass behind me unless he crosses the street and then I'll see him. He never passed behind me, so I decide to back out, and I look for him as I'm backing out, and there's nobody there. Nobody at all on the street, let alone this very tall man wearing a Dickies jumpsuit. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that is, believe it or not, an actual ghost. I just saw an actual ghost. So, you would think after 20 years of being a spirit medium, an actual ghost would be like, yeah, no big deal. Yeah, we see those all the time. Yeah, I see people like I never know if they're real or not real. No, usually I see spirits in my mind's eye. I hear them. I feel them. No, this was a guy walking down the street. It was like, whoa. So that made me think it was time to talk about ghosts. And so that's what we're talking about tonight. Where do you find minor ghosts? Not just, other ghosts. And in the chat room, SOR chat room, yeah, my cat has just been fed, Bob Davis. I don't know what's up with her. She's decided to run around for the show. Maybe it's the ghost in the house. She is actually bouncing off the walls as you hear her running around going, meow, meow. Ooh, she is bouncing off the walls. So anyway, sorry about that, guys, but I think we have some, things going on. Anyway, so minor ghosts, where to find them? Luckily we have this thing called the internet. You're not going to find them necessarily on the internet, but there are some really good sources of information if you want to go out ghost hunting. If you live in New Mexico or if you live in Colorado, especially in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, where there's been a ton of mining, where I was recently living for this past 7 years on a mountain on Horsefly Peak near Ridgeway and Ouray and Telluride and Placerville. If you live in that kind of place, all you need to do is go for a walk. Just go for a hike. And if you have any intuition at all, if you have any propensity or energy that allows ghosts... Yeah, my cat just ran up to my head, poked me in the head, and then jumped off the chair. Something's going on in this house. If you have any propensity to see things or enough energy that a ghost can presence, if you go for a hike in an area where there are mines or old miners, you are going to see, your ghosts will come looking for you. When they notice that you have a certain light or a certain interest or a certain energy about you, it's not a matter of you finding them or going and hunting them. They will come running at you. And that's what I found so disconcerting in the San Juans, is I would be minding my own business, taking a hike, going to a hotel to write, because I needed some headspace just to be alone and write, not having kitties meow at me, or, something else. And all of a sudden, there would be a ghost or a group of ghosts or several ghosts in my space. Like, hey, what are you doing here? You can see us. And, that's as hard as it is to find a ghost or a spirit of a miner in the San Juans in southern Colorado. Also, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. If you haven't been, I know that, Victoria and British Columbia and Alberta are beautiful places too, and Washington State is beautiful as well. But it's amazing. Just go take a hike. You'll find a miner ghost if you're in Colorado, because there are tons of mines. And life there was very harsh. And so there are ghosts that were doing jobs that were related to mining, that were in mining towns, or they did a lot of the guys who were drovers, who did the mule trains, who did the mule sleds, taking food to towns like Telluride or taking lumber to Telluride. A lot of them died in terrible ways. A lot of them died in the winter of frostbite, or they were overtaken by avalanches when they were coming up from the town of Telluride up to the Yankee Boy Mine, for example, or Camp Bird Mine. So there were a lot of deaths that happened in terms of transportation going to and from a mine. And sometimes even miners who were going into town would be overtaken by rock slides or rock avalanches. And one ghost that I met was in Telluride. I hadn't intended to meet him. He didn't see me out on the trail. He ended up seeing a client of mine out on the trail, and his name was George. I think it was George Szymanski or something like that. I just remember him really being George. And what was happening was, and the reason I was called in to work with this client was because she was coming to visit Telluride. She had a small child. She had her husband, and she was with friends, and they were going hiking. And the next thing she knows, after a hike in an avalanche-prone area, she gets back home, and she goes to sleep and wakes up right after she goes to sleep, and she sees this man over her daughter's crib. Like, she sees it as a full-bodied thing. And he's just, he's looking at the crib. He doesn't seem to be menacing or anything else. He's just looking at the crib, looking at the baby in the crib. And she freaks. She's like, what the freak is that? Well, I didn't know. She just came to me for a reading. I didn't know what had happened. And she comes in, and I say, oh, who's George? And she's like, I don't know who George is. And I'm like, well, he looks like this. And I describe what he looks like. Yeah, he's really got a beard, and he looks like he lives here. Did you know somebody who lived here? And she's like, no. And I go on, I'm like, oh, right. No, he says you didn't know him. He said he saw you walking under an avalanche chute, and he wanted to let you know not to do that. Well, what had happened is he was a miner who had been going to town, and he went past this avalanche chute, and there was a rock slide, and that was the end of him. And he went to warn her not to do that when she went hiking in the mountains, because she had a light. She was open. She might have been able to hear him. She could see him. So if you have any intuition whatsoever, if you have any light, and if ghosts like you, they can see information about you. Oh, she's a nice woman. She has a small child. It would be bad if a rock slide took her out right now, because then what would happen with her child? So that was George. George was a very kind miner ghost who was in a mine outside of Telluride. They don't have to be scary, but sometimes they're a bit scary. Some of the ghosts that I met that were scary were in Ouray. And Ouray is also in the San Juans. It's on the other side of the Snuffles Range from Telluride. And the two towns were connected. If people wanted to get equipment up to, there's a pass that goes up and over the range called Imogen Pass. And that goes to the Camp Bird Mine and the Yankee Boy Mine. And so people could either get to the mines from Ouray, that were up above Telluride and Ouray, or they could get to the mines from Telluride. And so there's a connection of miners and ghosts between the two towns, but it actually takes about an hour and a half to drive between Telluride and Ouray as things stand right now. Ouray is also a terminus point for a place called Red Mountain Pass, which goes from Durango, or the Durango area, it's Route 550, up through Silverton, and really Red Mountain Pass post Silverton is quite dangerous and beautiful, but there are a lot of mines and old ghost towns on Red Mountain Pass. But I've not had, just hiking around in those areas, I've not had any sort of feeling that there were any miners in Ironton or Guston or any of those areas, Camp Bird, that were at all menacing in any way. But in Ouray, miners would get rowdy, and sometimes they would basically gang up on somebody that they knew had gotten some gold, whether they might have been working their own mine, and they hit the load, and they came in the town, and they came in with their gold, and they would find out. They would have spies who would find out, and they would basically waylay this person. First, they would get them drunk, then they would waylay them, and then they would kill them and take their gold. And Ouray doesn't like to, publicize this, that, a lot of its citizens were rowdy gang killers, but that's what they were. And what's frightening as a medium, I was staying at the Bowmont Hotel when I was writing my book, Experience, and I would stay like a week at a time just to get lots of writing done. And I left there one night to go find something to eat. And all of a sudden, I get rushed by one of these gangs. They come down First Street, and I'm on the main street, and they're coming down First Street, and they're catcalling at me. And my only thought was, holy crap, run, because here is this gang of miner ghosts coming at me and catcalling, and I'm like, what are they going to do to me? Oh, I don't know what they're going to do to me. But the fact was they were scary, and I was scared. So I actually didn't run. I turned around and I went back to the hotel, and I rethought my dinner options because I didn't want to pass that group of miners again. But they were out, and I think they felt I think I emboldened them because I could hear them sort of and feel them feeling happy that I went back the other direction and that I had seen them. It's like somebody looking around a corner going, what is that? Oh, yeah, that's what I think it is. It's a bunch of miners who are, in a gang. And So I went back to the hotel. The Bowmont Hotel in Ouray is a haunted place that I am familiar with, and I'm familiar with some of the ghosts that are there. One of the ghosts is Jedediah. And Jedediah is there because Eller Day is still there. Eller Day was a waitress at the Bowmont Hotel, and she was well beloved by everybody in the town. She had this wonderful personality where it was always a sunny day. She always had a kind word for everyone that she met. She had a peaches and cream complexion and dark brown hair, but she was a good girl. She lived with her father. Her father, the issue there was that she got a boyfriend who was the pastry chef at the cafe at the Bowmont Hotel. And her father, the pastry chef, would drink too much. And he was African American or Creole. And her father would drink too much. And she was going back and forth in terms of relationship with this pastry chef. And she ended up where her father and the pastry chef were arguing about her situation. Her dad did not want her to marry the pastry chef, and probably rightly so, because he drank too much too. And anyway, the story goes that the pastry chef was jealous and shot her 4 times. Well, according to Eller Day, she was protecting her father. He meant to shoot her father to get her father out of the way. And she stood in front of her father and took the bullets for him. And so it's a sad story, because the next thing that happened was after she died, maybe less because he was African American, but that was part of it, but more because he had killed Eller Day, who was a sunny spot. She was a bright spot in all of their lives. She was a good girl. She was a sunny girl. She was a Christian girl. She, was a pretty girl. More because he took Eller away from all of these miners who had the dream of the good girl, the girl next door. more because of that, they basically stormed the jail and burned it down. And they say that they burned it down with him in it, but the way she shows the story is that they did take him out and drag him through the town. So, and I mean drag, like drag behind horses drag, in a very not nice way to die. So that's Eller Day. She does still haunt the Bowmont, but she's more of a calming force. She's basically feeling like, you know, what happened with her made the town do something very untoward, and she feels like she needs to stay. So we had that conversation, you know, why don't you move on, Eller? And she said, I feel like I want to stay until at least this hotel is secure in its position and at least this town feels secure. So she's staying. Now, there's another ghost who likes to stay there because she's there, and his name is Jed, and he was a minor, and he was her friend, but he wasn't her boyfriend. He was a little bit too old for that. He is on the rolls of the census rolls from 1880, and he lives in the Bowmont as well. And he was a transcendentalist. He was a follower of Emerson, and part of his excuse for becoming a ghost was he said that he thought that he should be able to become enlightened wherever he was, so he didn't go down the tunnel. So Jed also lives at the Bowmont Hotel with Eller, and he kind of watches over her, but he really likes books. He was a miner who loved to read books, and there's a bookstore in the Bowmont Hotel, and so he spends his time between anybody of light who goes into the hotel, anybody that can hear him, he'll have a conversation with you. He's a gentle man, and then he'll go down and he'll point out books for people to read in the bookstore. So that's Jed, and he was a miner. Now, how do you find who minor ghosts are? If you have any abilities as an evidential medium, you ask them what their names are. If you've got a ghost in front of you, you say, what's your name? In the case of Jed, he gave me his name, and he gave me his last name, and I went to the Genealogical Society of the Mormons, and they had all sorts of information and all sorts of census information for the town of Ouray, and his name was there in the census. They had him listed as being Italian, even though he had a very English name. So it was like, really? You know? But the whole he lived in a boarding house. It was Miss Mary's boarding house. And basically, I think Miss Mary had said, well, we have this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. And they're like, okay, well, where are they from? And she said Italy, because everybody in her boarding house was from Italy, apparently. Well, Jed wasn't from Italy. He was from, like, Ohio, Pennsylvania or Ohio, something like that. I can't remember now. And, you know, his parents had a farm, and he had decided to take his chances in the West and, you know, leave the Midwest and go to the West, and that's how he got to Ouray. So, interesting things. You know, ghosts are not, you would think minor ghost would be a certain way, and then you have this gentleman very gentle man who decided, because Eller was a ghost, because he was a transcendentalist, that he was just going to stay because he should be able to get enlightened no matter where he is. Wow. Okay. Great. Now, if you want to go looking for ghosts, I'm going to go back to the internet for you. Great places to go to research where you might go. First of all is Wikipedia. Just go to Google or Yahoo or whatever you want to do, ghost towns, and go to Wikipedia. And not only will they have ghost towns in the United States and Canada, they'll have ghost towns by state. And then you'll be able to pull up the town in Wikipedia. Another way to do it is there's a ghosttowns.com that's online, and they will also have some ghost towns by state and for both, and by province, by Canada as well. So that's another way to find out where your ghosts are. I've never had to use a ghost box or anything like that because I'm already a medium, and I don't really have the need. I'm not operating from the level of needing to hear a voice, though I think if I invested in a ghost box, I think I'd have a good time with it. But basically, if you're curious and you're interested, the ghosts will find you when you go to these places. The ghosts will be looking for you. They will, as one ghost hunter says, we're not hunting ghosts, the ghosts are hunting us. And that's true. You really shouldn't have a problem finding ghosts anywhere you go. And part of the issue, especially a place like Colorado or a place that was very harsh, parts of Canada, the Yukon, there were people that had a lot of dreams and aspirations who had their lives cut short early, or people who had a lot of desire for something who never realized that desire. And one of the things that makes a ghost is grasping. The idea, and this is also where karma comes from. So I met some ghosts at Alta up above, Alta Lakes and Alta Mining Camp. Alta Mining Camp is a ghost mining camp. There's nobody there. It was a gold mining camp, and the people who were there really wanted to find gold. They felt that they were going to strike it rich, and their lives would be forever changed. And Alta Lakes and Alta are beautiful. They're on a steep side of the mountain, just to the southwest of Telluride. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place. But the sense of the ghost, at least one of the ghosts that I talked to, was that this ghost was so enamored with the idea of becoming rich, of grasping for money, that this guy didn't even know that he was dead. So he had become so focused and so obsessed for this one thing, which was money. So gold mining towns, if you want to find really ghostly ghosts who are really stuck, find an old gold mining town, go to California, go to the Yukon, there are gold mining places all over the place. There's a gold mine here up above Madrid as well. But what you'll find are the ghosts that are really stuck because they so wanted something that they never got. And then they had this feeling that, how come God didn't give me what I put my effort into? Or how come I was forsaken? Or they just go into denial that they even died. And they'll be there still at the mine, in their minds, working to find their pot of gold. And that's really sad, but they're there. Now, there are other ghosts in mining areas, especially in the mountains, that are basically spirits who did go to the light, who did have their life review, and then decided to come back because they loved the mountains, because they loved the beauty of it. They loved the contrast of it, the contrast of really having to survive, to work to survive in harsh conditions, but this intense, phenomenal beauty of a snowstorm, or after a snowstorm when the blue sky comes out, or just this intensity of changes and this real depth of feeling. There are places in the high mountains where you really feel alive because you are on the edge. You are stepping out on the edge of a place that's, anything could happen. It is unknown. The unexpected does happen. Avalanches do happen. People do fall off of cliffs. It's just, but they really felt alive there, and there was a lot of beauty there. And some of them just like to fish, so they'll be at their fishing holes. Something that they would do on their days off. They would go fish. And they like their fishing holes, so they'll go, and part of their heavenly experience is coming back and sitting by their fishing hole. So there's that kind of ghost there in the mountains as well, that you will if you put a call out, you may find several of those. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions about ghosts? I am looking at the SOR Space Travelers chat room. I am not looking at Spreaker. I can't get into it for some reason this evening. So if you're on SOR Space Travelers and you have a question about a ghost or a ghost sighting of your own, feel free to ask it. And I can look at it real quick for you and see what I see from here. Oh, wow, there was somebody else I wanted to tell you about who is a really cool ghost. Who is it? So many ghosts. Let's see. And this one I have a name for. Oh, Stumpy. Stumpy was not a miner. Stumpy was one of the mule team drivers who drove a sled in the wintertime. And I was living up on the Uncompahgre Plateau on Horsefly Mesa, and I was living at the halfway point. I was the neighbor house to what had once been the halfway point for the mule team drivers to take goods, to take bacon, to take lumber, to take food to Telluride. And they would leave from Montrose, and they'd go up over the Uncompahgre Plateau, over Horsefly Mesa, and then down into Placerville, and then up the San Miguel River Valley into Telluride with their horse teams and their mule teams. Well, Stumpy, they didn't have NOAA back then. They wouldn't really know when a snowstorm was coming in. And Horsefly Mesa and the Uncompahgre Plateau, once you get up over from the Montrose side, it becomes this incredible snowfield. It's just the most amount of snow that you're going to find below 10,000 feet in western Colorado is on the Uncompahgre Plateau. So Stumpy is one of the drivers, and his team gets stuck right in Sanborn Park, which is the mountain valley that the little ranch I was living on was at. His team gets stuck, and he's only about 1.5 miles or 2 miles from the halfway point where he needs to get into to get warm. But it's snowing so hard, and the track has been blown over, that he ends up getting lost in the storm, and he ends up getting frostbite. And he loses his toes, he loses his lower leg, he loses his fingers. And a lot of his horses died because they were out in the snowstorm, and it became bitter cold. And snowstorms up there can last 3 days. So Stumpy was a ghost. He was a neighborhood ghost of mine, and he would also be a ghost in Telluride, because after he was a ghost partially of where partially where everything went wrong for him, which was my neighborhood. Everything went wrong right there. And then he was a ghost in Telluride because he liked to drink. After everything went wrong, he became a town drunk. And he basically, would beg for money, and people would give him money because they'd feel sorry for him. And he basically drank his life away because he had such bad frostbite. But that was Stumpy. And I consider him a minor ghost because he worked toward keeping the mines open. And he was a bullshitter. Ooh, I don't know if I can say that on air. Sorry, Spreaker. But okay, sorry. Whoops. A bullcrapper. Beep that out, please. He even as a ghost, he was a bullcrapper. So he was interesting. There also would be various wives of miners that you'll find in miner territory, and various women friends, some women friends of ill repute. If you go into Telluride, go to the town library. If you're sensitive at all, go sit on the patio at the Wilkinson Library. You will be, if you are sensitive, you will soon be surrounded by Library Mary. What? She's a librarian? No, she was the town madam. and the library just happens to be in her territory. So it's a public place, and if you're a medium, and you go in, Library Mary will come with some of her girls, and will come right up to your face and say, "What are you doing here?" And then in my case, I was there for a writer's workshop. That's why I was sitting on the porch, and I said, "I'm here for a writer's workshop. But what are you doing here? Like, why are you wasting your time with this?" And, we had a conversation. And if you are sensitive, you'll see her around town. You'll especially see her around town on festival days, because she likes to play with people. She likes to find a person who's a good target and play with them. Some of her girls don't like festival days in Telluride, and they'll go out and visit others and leave town because they don't like all the people who come in. So excuse me 1 second, but Library Mary, good ghost to know in Telluride. She knows everybody. She's madam. Let's see. Madrid does have minor ghosts. A lot of ghosts are, again, miners who died in industrial accidents, in mining accidents, moving things, moving coal, moving on the train, moving with horses. But then Madrid also has ghosts from the hippie days, and they have ghosts of people who have gotten into arguments over loved ones, gotten into arguments over drugs, gotten OD'd on drugs, committed suicide. It's interesting because it seems as if towns that have pre-existing ghosts will collect more ghosts, or towns that are in the mountains where there are portals seem to have a lot of ghosts. I'm not sure why this is, but that's how it seems to me. If you go to Ouray, for example, and you go up the road to the Camp Bird Mine, there are portals all along the San Miguel River up that road. And they're very strong portals. And there are portals in Ouray. And I'm sure there are a few portals, especially down in the south end of town for Madrid, there's a portal. And that's where a lot of the ghosts congregate. And somebody who knows a lot about portals maybe could tell me specifically why this is, but it seems that portals just make a thinning of the veil. They make a thinning between the dimensions, and so there's something going on there with ghosts and mining towns and portals. So if you've got anything like that, you've got a place where you think there are portals, look for minor ghosts or put the feelers out there. They will find you. I know, poor Stumpy. Stumpy really had it bad. The other ghost up there, Gail, that was in my area on the Horsefly Mesa was Mrs. Olson. And Mrs. Olson... I think Olsen was a Swedish name, but to me, she seemed very Irish. So she may have been somebody who met a Swedish man on the boat over and married him and came out west. She stayed. She was the woman who cooked for the halfway house, and her husband helped run the halfway house, the halfway point between Montrose, Colorado, and Telluride, Colorado. And she stayed. She came back. She had her life review, and she was a friendly local ghost. And now the dogs outside are going crazy, and that never happens. There are some big dogs out there. Wow. See, we got ghosts everywhere. But Mrs. Olson was very nice, and she was more like a guide and like a calming person, and she would take care of people, and she took care of Stumpy when he had his. It was her husband who found him and noticed that there were horses out there, and this guy had never arrived, and they expected him to. But she was a good lady. So again, you'll find wives. You'll find pioneer women, you'll find strong women, and who sometimes just decide to come back and be in a place that they had a very interesting life. Mrs. Olson, I used to talk to her quite a bit. Native American ghosts will often be in mining towns. Ute ghosts in Colorado, there are a lot of Ute ghosts. Now, they didn't really think that it was good to be a ghost, but they're more spirits. They're not really ghosts. And they're more spirit protectors of the place. Yeah. Hey, James, are you around? I think James is a ghost.
I'm here. You just had to wait until I ran across the room and put everything down that I was doing. Sorry. Did you want cake or something, or what's going on?
No, I want to talk about what you're going to talk about ghosts tonight and the Ghost of Gettysburg with Mark Nesbitt.
Yeah, Mark, really cool guy, has been working for the federal park system in the U.S. for years and years, and was lucky enough to hook up at Gettysburg, and is one of those guys who gets the tourists coming up saying, "Oh, can I get a picture of you standing in front of the building?" Or, "I just took a picture with my digital camera of my husband, and I don't know who these two guys are," and standing behind him in the Confederate outfits. He goes, "Oh, you mean the guys with no legs?" Yeah. That's kind of interesting. They also hear things. They like the residual energy. We'll talk a little bit about residual energy. And they actually hear gunfire and screaming and cannon in the background at times.
Do they see lights? Did they see lights out on the field, like, lamps or anything like that?
I think we did talk about that, yeah, at one point. Yeah, there was interesting. And he also talks about some of the buildings that are on the property itself and that were used by both sides as the battle shucked and jived back and forth, and how long they were, the bodies were left out there, and who exhumed them and buried them eventually. It was interesting, very, very interesting, and it'll be fun. And then tomorrow, a bit of a change up. Now, I'm in Facebook jail, so I can't post anything until March 4th at 1800 hours, because I went post crazy today about posting a lot of the shows. So what you're not going to know via Facebook is that tomorrow Paisley's called in sick, so it's Joanna the medium and Skeeter on two mediums and a large, and they are going to be just going crazy because putting them both on the same show, the energy is going to be incredible. We're going to have dueling alien spirit guides, and it's going to be fun.
Oh, wow. Oh,
allegedly, it's going to be
stick
fun.
Around. It will be allegedly fun. And before that, I have Alex Matsua. We're going to continue on the ghost theme because she's going to be live, and she studied the Haunted Theater in San Diego. Gosh, I wish I could remember the name, and I should be looking at it. But
I could, if you can't remember, I can always pull up my interview with her.
But you did you interview Alex Matsua?
Yeah, last year. She's really cool. I was going to get her back on. I still have to bug her too, because she was going to write a book that actually she was studying suicides, and she was looking into talking about a whole bunch of stuff about what happens to the spirit if you were to commit suicide, and she's putting together information for a book on that. So I've been waiting semi-patiently for her to get that book done and drag her kicking and screaming out and talk about it.
Yeah, she's a good interviewer. I've known her, I think, probably longer than you, but we're going to talk about the haunting of the 10th. Yeah, she's my friend first. We're going to talk about the haunting of the 10th Avenue Theater tomorrow. So, she interviewed me like 2 years ago.
Oh,
so I was like,
that's right.
I should return the favor for her.
I think I gave her your name.
What?
I think I gave her your name. What?
Yeah. And then she hung up on you.
Yeah.
No.
It's like, Hello, my name is Elizabeth. No, you sound like a man. Yes, that's Elizabeth. Oh, Elizabeth. So, lots of really cool stuff paranormal-wise happening out where I live. We've got a lot of good paranormal investigations coming up with the Canadian Paranormal Society, and was in a burlesque theater last night that opened in 1947 that my mom hung out in back in the late 40s, early 50s. And
did your mom hang out there, or did your mom take her clothes off there? I mean,
I beg your pardon?
Burlesque is a wonderful art form of taking your clothes off in a very wonderful way, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. But there were performers there, Frank Sinatra, Louis Armstrong. I was going through the list of who Jack Benny, just Glenn Miller, everybody performed there. Or if they weren't performing in town, they would come back, they'd hang out there after. And it was kind of the sportsman's club, and then it became a building called the Penthouse. Basically, a lovely haunted place owned by some Italians who had their fingers into a lot more than they should have been back in the day. So bootleggers, and it was interesting place, but we have a chance of getting in there, and that'll be a lot of fun because the place has the vibe from the 1940s, and it's one of the original buildings that still exists. And I'm sure there was, man, if the walls could talk in there, they would have been killed a long time ago. The walls are talking. Boom, boom. There you go. Forget about it. Yeah. So what do you got coming on tomorrow? You've got Alex coming in for the first hour.
Alex is going to be in for the first hour. It is going to be live, and she's a wonderful interview, and she knows her stuff. And then you've got Skeeter and Joanna. So
yeah, that's going to be crazy.
It should be a fun night. Now, sadly, I hope I will be up for it. My kitty cat appears to be dying. My other kitty cat, the Meow Feed Me Now kitty cat, Oreo.
Yeah.
She did not. Sad news, she's not picking up and eating again. And when kitty cats don't eat after they get sick, their liver goes into liver jaundice.
Yes,
so I'm going to be feeding her.
Adopted a cat, about a 12-year-old cat from the local SPCA, and it hadn't been adopted. Like, it lived in the SPCA for years, and we adopted it, brought it home, and it didn't like it. It stopped eating, so we had to put a tube surgically in its neck and inject the food that way.
Yeah,
but she did lose weight.
I'm injecting baby food at this point, and she's beginning to fight me. And I'm like, well, okay, if you're not gonna, I have watered down baby food in a syringe, and I'm like, well, if you're not gonna eat, then you are 21. You have been around for a while.
21.
So I hope I'll be okay. I think I will be.
For the cat that's 21. How old is that in dog years?
It's the same.
Oh, okay. So 21 in dog years, isn't that like you multiply it by 7?
Yeah.
So same thing for cats?
Yeah. My understanding is it's the same thing for cats. Not many cats live to be 20. No. So, I mean, you can get them to live to be 24, but that's not really, really common. I mean, they're like small dogs, 18, 16, 17, 18, 19.
Out here we don't get them that live that old.
Well.
It's just because of the immigration from the Pacific Rim. Hey, say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, everybody. If you want to talk to me or get a reading or a spirit mediumship, go to ElizabethAnglin.com. I'll be back tomorrow with Alex Matsua. I love you guys all. I'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large. Heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
It's time to go live on Spaced Out Weekend.
13, please. Oh, hi, Kevin. Oh, is that the time? Kevin, my friend, don't you find that watch just a little bit loud? Well, I certainly hope our buddy Bumblefoot is playing when we get there. Oh, you stinky big bundle of hair. I said Bumblefoot, not Bigfoot. Oh, it's going to be a long night.
It's time to head to the 13th floor of the old log cabin for Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson. You can tweet James at James Tyson SOR. You can find him on Instagram, Spaced.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
And now, perched high in his captain's chair, way above the clouds, here's James Tyson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spaced Out Weekend. Thank you for listening to the Spaced Out Radio Network on spacedoutradio.com. On Spreaker, the High Plains Talk Radio Network at 107.7 FM. And, actually, no, that's the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans. And all of their listener around 160 countries. bouncing around this little dot that circles the sun. We are now also broadcasting to the greater Atlanta area on WQEE 99 Rock, The Key. And we want to welcome all the listeners in the greater Atlanta area. We want to thank our other listeners who've been hanging with us for the longest time. And here on Spaced Out Radio, we broadcast every night of the week as we want to be your one-stop shop when it comes to the supernatural, paranormal, UFOs, conspiracy, spiritual, and more. And our music that you hear on the intro, other than the old retro music, the guitar is from Ron Bumblefoot Thal, now of Art of Anarchy. He was with Guns N' Roses. He is the man and the official sound of Spaced Out Radio. You can check me out on Twitter at James Tyson SOR. Give my Facebook pages a like at Spaced Out Weekend. Join us on our Facebook page at Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Spaced Out Weekend. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, where you can also find us on TuneIn and iTunes. And, of course, spaceoutradio.com. At this time, I'd also like to say hello to everyone taking part in the chat rooms on Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers, and a hat tip to our fans and partners on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Chronicles of the Unknown, and Forest Moon Paranormal, as well as my group at the Canadian Paranormal Society. Sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club, and I will assure your name gets entered into a monthly prize draw, access to private group interviews, access to special sections on our website, and much more. It's only $5 a month, way cheaper than your half-cap foamed Ariana Grande with cinnamon. And while you're at our spacedoutradio.com, you can read our latest blogs and check out Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire for his latest in weird news. And also, while you're there, go to the SOR Sightlines. It's there for you if you've had an experience and want to have it investigated by Mike Schmidt. Just fill out the Sightlines report, and we'll get back to you. All information is 100% confidential. And tonight, here on Spaced Out Weekend, we have a special guest all the way from south of where I live. It's Mark Nesbitt. Now, Mark worked for the National Park Service as a federal agent, as a ranger. He was a historian for 5 years. He then became a licensed battlefield guide. His job with the National Park Service provided him not only with the opportunity to spend time in all the historic buildings in Gettysburg National Park, but actually live in 4 of them. Mark started his own research and writing company in 1977. He did research and advertising copy for some of America's best historical artists. Now, being a resident of Gettysburg for over 30 years has provided Mark with a unique insider perspective, and that's why we're dragging him kicking and screaming here. In 1991, Mark's first book, Ghosts of Gettysburg series, was released. Now, then in 1994, he was approached by a member of Gettysburg Bureau Council about creating a ghost tour based on the stories that he had in his books. Now, Mark accepted the challenge, and as a result, the first ghost walk in Gettysburg, the Ghosts of Gettysburg Candlelight walking tours, were created. Armed with the tales from his ghost books, and with a few that aren't, guides dressed in period attire, visitors on evening tours through sections of town that were bloody battlefields, through night-darkened streets to houses and buildings where it's not quite not as quiet as it should be, to old sites and the old Pennsylvania College campus where the slain once lay in rows and the wounded suffered horribly, waiting to become corpses themselves, to cemeteries where the dead lie, sometimes not so peacefully. Well, Mark, welcome to Spaced Out Weekend. It's wonderful to have you here. What an experience you've had. Let's go back to actually becoming a park ranger. Did you live in Gettysburg at the time, or did you apply to the Park Service and that's where you were transferred?
Yeah, actually, this started when I was in college, and I worked in construction in his business for a number of years, high school and a couple of years in college, and it finally got to the point where I was, and we had visited Gettysburg many times as tourists. And it got to the point where I just decided I wanted to try something new, live away from home for the summer, and try and get a job in Gettysburg. And I applied to the National Park Service. And interestingly enough, that was a particular year that they were having a big turnover. So I got actually as a summer job to begin with, and that eventually kept going back. And that over the summers, and that eventually turned into a 180-day appointment after I had graduated from college, which is basically full-time. Mm-hmm. And so it was really a unique experience because, having gone there as a tourist for so many years and watched all the national park programs and everything, it was really kind of a thrill to be able to stand there and use the knowledge that I gained to actually help people understand the incredible battle and its effects on the United States at the time, and also the effects that it still has on America. And so it was a pretty neat job for a summer job, and eventually turned into a situation where I rode a horse for several years and gave talks as a Union cavalryman from the back of the horse. And so I had a lot of fun experiences, and of course that's when all actually the genesis of the Ghost book started, from some of my experiences there on the battlefield and with other park rangers and in some of those houses out on the battlefield.
Now, because we are broadcasting not only to the United States, could you? I'm gonna get you to put your park ranger hat on again. And give us a bit of a background of the Battle of Gettysburg.
Okay, well, Gettysburg was actually, it occurred just about in the middle of the American Civil War. Civil War lasted from April of 1861 to April 1865, roughly. And so Gettysburg was about smack in the middle of it. Gettysburg was the culmination of the second Southern invasion of the North. The South was fighting basically a defensive war. They had a previous invasion, which was in September of 1862, which was stopped at the Battle of Antietam, or Sharpsburg, which was the bloodiest single day in all of American history, World War II battles included. Gettysburg then was the second Confederate invasion, Southern invasion of the northern states. Second and last, because it's the battle was so huge, so costly to the South, they could not muster enough energy and manpower to invade the North a second time. The casualties, well, to give you a perspective on what happened there, roughly, we used to give the figures, 97,000 Union soldiers and 75,000 Confederates fought in the 3-day battle. They went on for 3 days fighting. And the total number of casualties would be 51,000 casualties in just 3 days. That's killed, wounded, and missing. All dropped down on a town of about 2,400 people in Gettysburg. Mostly, most of the men had what they called back in those days skedaddled with the dry goods and with the cattle, and they tried to get north of the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. And the 2,400 people was probably in Gettysburg was probably reduced at least in half, and those were mostly women and children left to care for these 51,000 helpless, wounded men for weeks afterwards, with just a handful of surgeons that were left behind by the armies. It was a watershed for not only the country itself, but and the war, but for Gettysburg too, because ever since those 3 days in 1863, 150 some years ago, the town has never been the same. It was kind of a sleepy little town beforehand that was mostly agrarian in economy. To almost immediately after the battle, people started coming to see the battlefields to try and find wounded or dead relatives, and that was the beginning of the tourism economy in Gettysburg. Shortly after the battle started, and it continues to this day.
Wow. And I could imagine the volume of dead in a place like that. How long? Now, being in Canada, we heard rumors that a lot of them were just left there to rot. But were all the bodies recovered that were above ground, let's say, that weren't buried in explosions and things like that? But
right.
Did they recover as many as they wanted?
Not really. A lot of when I was a park ranger there working behind the information desk, people would come in and ask, did they get all the bodies? And finally we asked the bosses, what should we tell them? And they said, well, I told them they got them all. Well, we know now that's not true because I think the most recent remains, you can't even call it a body, bones and some cloth and of a uniform, they were found back in 1996 or 97. So they still find remnants of soldiers on the battlefield. And also you have to remember that you had between 5 and 7 or so thousand killed on the battlefield. They were all buried. Every soldier that was killed at Gettysburg or died at Gettysburg was basically buried twice. First in the right on the battlefield where he was killed or where he and his comrades were gathered to, or dead comrades were gathered to be buried. And then that became a problem because the graves would wash open and the housewives suddenly would be confronted with a grisly arm or leg or something sticking out of their gardens. They complained to their husbands, who complained then to the government in Pennsylvania. And they finally got someone by the name of David Wills, a local Gettysburg attorney, to use the money the state of Pennsylvania and the federal government provided to buy 17 acres up on Cemetery Hill, which was already a cemetery, the Citizens Evergreen Cemetery. But he purchased this land, and then within a few months after the battle, the Union soldiers that were buried out on the battlefield were exhumed and were started being brought to the National Cemetery and buried there. And then later on, the graves were consecrated by, of course, Abraham Lincoln in November of 1863, who delivered the Gettysburg Address. Now, that's just the Union soldiers. The Confederates who died and were buried out on the battlefield remained on the battlefield in these shallow graves, unembalmed, no caskets, until about 1870 or 1871. When the South finally, some of the states in the South finally got enough money together because they were really, really poor after the war, got enough money together to hire somebody in Gettysburg to exhume the bodies or remains and ship them south to those the so-called national cemeteries of the South, Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond, Virginia, Laurel Grove Cemetery down in Savannah. So, which kind of leads in a sense to some of the ghost stories, because one of the reasons experts say causes spirits to remain on this earthly plane is an unconsecrated burial. And for a long time, several months, the Union soldiers remained in unconsecrated graves out on the battlefield. And of course, the Southerners then remained in unconsecrated graves until the 1870s. So that, for those of a religious bent, that may be one of the reasons why the battlefield is considered so haunted.
One of the things that I've always, thought about too, and I know this from, just reading books and some of the history I get from World War I, and in the fields of Belgium, where farmers for the last 100 years are very used to seeing images literally coming up over the top of trenches that don't exist anymore and eventually fading away. But they're on a loop. They're not ghosts. It's an imprint. It's that residual energy, probably from very high energy individuals, absolutely terrified, filled with adrenaline, and they've imprinted coming out of the trench. There is a picture or a bit of a video that's been around the internet where you've got a young soldier in Gettysburg going from one tree to another tree. Are you familiar with that one?
I know that there is a video of it looks like several soldiers moving from one area behind trees to another. I've seen that one.
Okay.
And that one was taken at a place where I'm very familiar with, the triangular field, and I've seen it. It does kind of look kind of spooky, but I also know that area down there is not completely abandoned. That's the Boy Scout trail that's in Gettysburg that runs back there. That could account for that. Now, I'm always trying to debunk these things, but sometimes I can't. The problem is that they seem to be going in the wrong direction for this Boy Scout trail. They usually went the other way when hiking the trail. So that one I know I'm familiar with. I'm still not 100% convinced that it's paranormal, but I've certainly collected enough stories myself to convince me, and visual evidence and auditory evidence as well. That there's something going on paranormal at Gettysburg. I mean, seven books, an eighth on its way. Well over 1,000 stories I've collected too.
That's amazing. Once you got the job there, how long was it before you started hearing the bump in the night?
Well, it may have started right away, because I'm not, so many of us, if you're really not aware of how paranormal, how ghostly phenomenon actually acts upon you, sometimes you just blow it off, and say, it's in my imagination or whatever. But the one time that I really remember, I mean, I lived in, as you said, 4 houses. The one house, there was a door that I'd heard would never stay shut, and led to the attic. And one of my coworkers actually nailed it shut one night with one of these little pin nails, because he didn't want to damage the door. And sure enough, the next day it was open. I kept trying to keep it shut, and it wouldn't stay shut for me. And then maybe the one that really kind of rocked me and got me really, really interested. One day I used to live in the National Cemetery Lodge. Yes, that's right in the National Cemetery.
Bless you.
That's just asking for trouble.
Yeah.
So I was there it was a nice afternoon. It was not dark. It wasn't nighttime like you see in all the TV programs. And I'd taken my dishes out to the kitchen, and I heard the strangest little, like a squeal. And I stopped. I mean, I just froze. I'm like, what in the world was that? And I was thinking, that sounded exactly like a baby crying. And then I kind of like, yeah, right. Come on, there ain't babies here. Was that the pipes? No. That sounded like a baby crying. So I didn't think too much about it, and I took my dishes in. The next couple days, I was in the coffee room, and I mentioned it to some of my coworkers, and they were like, stop right there. You need to talk to such and such, this woman who lived there before you. And so I did, and sure enough, she had heard babies crying several times in that building. And the only thing I can attribute it to is just down the street, 2 doors down, was the famous orphanage that was established after the battle, after the Civil War, for the orphans of the veterans who had been killed in the Civil War. and there were not only children but small children as well, and perhaps some babies in that orphanage. And so that if we, if we're going to attribute it to anything historical, that very well might be the origin of that weird sound that I heard.
Oh, that's fascinating. Now, you were saying you've written a large group of books here. My listener can go to the website Ghosts of Gettysburg. Gettysburg.com. Ghosts of Gettysburg.com. And go to the store and you'll see 8 books right off the bat that Mark's written. And he's got CDs, DVDs, books, actually. Some are paranormal, some are history. It's fascinating and a good job. It's really nice to bring out both sides of this. And what I mean by both sides, the history and the paranormal, which really it kind of makes it makes this new generation of paranormal junkies kind of pay attention a little bit more to the history that is out there. When you started running into the baby crying and things like that, now you've kind of piqued that curiosity. Have you ever been told that you're sensitive or like you're empathic?
No.
Okay.
And I know that I'm not. I'm not very sensitive at all. Compared to other people, I mean, I have, you have weird feelings. I had, when I was doing night patrol on the battlefield, there would be times when we'd, just beautiful summer night, I'd stop the car and get out and walk around Devil's Den, which is, kind of an ominous sounding place anyhow, one of the battle sites. And, I had a firearm and I had a radio. I was, I figured that was pretty safe. Then there are other times when I'd be driving around out there and I'd say, I think maybe I'd just stop and get out of the car, stretch my legs. And then I'd get that chill up my spine, and the hair on the back of my neck would stand and I'd be like, maybe I'll wait. Maybe I'll get out next time I come through here. Yeah. So that's about the closest that I've ever gotten to having a weird feeling, something paranormal is going to happen. But as compared to other people who I have one friend who will be walking down the street with her husband and she'll say, "Is that Jim? Do you see that guy leaning up against the building there?" And he'll say no, and she'll say, "Oh, okay. I just want to make sure that was a ghost."
Oh, lovely.
Now that's empathic or
it's being sensitive to that energy that's on the other side. Now, in your career, and you're dealing with a lot of tourists, and you're in a tourist location, so out comes the cameras. Did you get a lot of people coming to you saying, I took a picture of this field and there's 3 people standing in it, or is this? Do you know anything about this? Do you run through that a lot too?
Yeah, we have a whole wall in our building that is dedicated to photographs that have been sent to us, and a lot more in my files that we just don't have room to put up. But we have, in fact, probably one of the best photographs. We do investigations ourselves, and we invite investigators into our building to stay overnight. And there were actually a couple that are in book 7, a couple of photographs we put in. One we took using a trail cam or a game cam. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they take pictures of, it's for hunters who will want to stake out a trail, it takes pictures at night, so it's infrared and also motion sensing. Figure this might be a pretty good thing to use to take pictures of paranormal energies. So we set it up one night in a place called the Cashtown Inn, which is about 7 miles from Gettysburg, and very, very active, and was kind of like the funnel point for the Confederate Army. Probably 3/4 of the Confederate Army passed by the Cashtown Inn. Robert E. Lee, the Confederate commander, spent some time there. A.P. Hill, another Confederate commander, had his headquarters there. So it's pretty active. And we knew that the bar, they have a bar in there, a small bar, and it's closed and locked at night. So we set the camera up, and the nice part about these cameras is that they're date and time stamped. So we set it up, and at 35 minutes after midnight, we got a great picture of the owner locking the bar up. I mean, you can see a shadow or a bright figure as he walks, breaks the plane of the camera, and gets his picture taken. And so he finishes locking up, and so the bar is locked, closed, nobody in it, dark. 9 minutes later, the camera goes off again and takes a picture of something that I'm absolutely positive is a spirit entity that broke the plane of the camera and set it off. So that photograph is in there in the book 7. And also, we have known that we've had child ghosts in the building that we occupy for our ghost tours, our headquarters. We've heard them. One of our employees actually saw a little boy, and she described him as having suspenders, a white shirt, dirty blonde hair. She actually saw him in one of our hallways. And so I invited a group to come in and spend the night and do their investigation, do whatever they wanted to do. And the next day, the fella came to me, and the boss there, and he said, well, I got an interesting thing to show you. They had set up their cameras and were hearing things, little children playing and trying to move the cameras around, trying to follow them around as like typical little kids. The kids kept moving around, so he got smart and put his camera in one spot and took about anywhere from 50 to 75 photographs back into the back room in the Civil War section of the building. And one of the photos came out, and it showed a little boy, probably about 4, maybe 5 years old. And he had it's in black and white, and he looks like he has kind of blondish hair and suspenders. And once again, it's not a photo of a little boy. You can't make out details, features, which is typical of a spirit photo. Mm-hmm. But you can certainly make out that it is a child in this photo. So that's the other one that I'm really convinced is a picture of a spirit in Gettysburg.
Wow. Yeah, you put on these tours, and I guess if you went onto your website, is there a calendar there that says this is when we do them? And because I can't imagine you doing that 365 days a day or days a year, because that get you a little bit tired, but. Pretty much dies down. The ghosts may still be there, but there are not a lot of people to see them in the wintertime. Right. And so December, January, February, pretty much we're closed, except for groups, large groups and things like that. Mm-hmm. We'll take them around. But but we're open from March through Thanksgiving in November. And there is a calendar that people can click on to see when we are open for business, what days and what tours are available those particular days. Very cool. And again, that's at ghostsofgettysburg.com. Now, Mark, I'm thinking back as me as a young Mountie assigned to someplace, and I'm doing patrols out by myself. You're out on patrol in these areas. You get the hair on the back of the neck standing up a bit, and you're starting to understand and plus you're on a battlefield, for goodness sakes. You don't have to, that's not a big Hardy Boys kind of jump to realize there could be some ghostly activity. And, your imagination will start running wild. But after a while, when you start talking to the guys who've been working there a bit longer, these things that you think that are all in your mind are becoming more real. Like when you guys all sat around for a beer on a weekend, what kind of stories did you share about the stuff that you saw? Well, most of the stories were that we would share would be kind of the fun stuff that happened to us. Dealing with tourists and visitors is always an interesting an interesting prospect.
But when we did get serious and started talking about stuff, I got kind of proactive about it and started asking my colleagues out there if anything had ever happened to them. And I started getting some interesting stories. I think the most fascinating part of some of the stories is that they're recurrent. In other words, I had heard the story of this one image that people would get, and it came from an older park ranger, and he told me the story of this group of dignitaries that were out on the that someone was taking around. They're out on Little Round Top, which is a kind of you can see virtually the whole battlefield from Little Round Top, and they looked down into the valley and they saw a group of soldiers marching around. Remember, this is back in the 1950s, so there weren't a lot of reenactment groups, if any, around back in the 1950s, and they were so impressed that the National Park Service would put on this display, which they were watching below them until the group marched off into the woods, and that they demanded that they be taken back to the superintendent, and they wanted to thank him personally for putting on this display for them because they were so very important. And they thanked they got there and they thanked the superintendent, and he just nodded his head, and the two rangers, the superintendent and the ranger, looked at each other like, what? What did they just see? But it was named after that the Phantom Regiment, because there were no reenactment groups on the battlefield that day, and no one could find any cars or anything. So, and the interesting part is I have a number of other accounts of people who saw a fairly large group of soldiers marching around. In fact, one is very typical, a woman and her son and the family dog. Now, the dog is important. They were out on the battlefield just when it opened, about 6 o'clock, and they were out by the place called the Peach Orchard. They'd come over a hill, and sure enough, they thought they were reenactors out there that were preparing for their day at Gettysburg, marching around doing maneuvers. And they were watching them, and the dog in the back seat was growling. So the dog saw it too. And all of a sudden, a couple of joggers came up along the road, and the entire unit, the whole group of men, disappeared, just vanished before their eyes. And the dog stopped growling. And the people were like, what in the world just happened? And of course they, when human beings have seen something like that, and they try and analyze it, they come up with all kinds of excuses. We have so much baggage. We're saying, oh, well, maybe I had one too many to drink last night, or maybe something on my contacts, or whatever. The dog, okay, animals do not have those excuses. That dog saw it too.
Yeah.
And so what that means, it was actually out there. What they saw was actually out there because of the testimony of the dog, because he didn't have too much to drink the night before. So that's important, but it was virtually the same description. And I have a number, and those are the ones that those are the stories that I really like, that I have several different witnesses at several different time periods, basically seeing the same thing, or hearing the same thing. It isn't always visual, which a lot of people think the only way to experience a ghost is by seeing one, but all the human senses are involved.
What type of things did you hear out there?
Drums. I personally heard drums. Other people have heard huge groups of men cheering and shouting coming from the woods. Gunfire, volleys of musketry. I heard that as well, but not at Gettysburg. I was down at Spotsylvania, which is another famous battlefield in Virginia, and I heard ragged fire of musketry. People have heard cannons going off. There's a famous place on the first day's battlefield at Gettysburg, because it was 3 days, called Iverson's Pits. Iverson's Pits was a long burial area where for Confederates, North Carolinians, where they had dug a long grave, and then when they exhumed the bodies, trench remained, a depression. And the farmer, this is shortly after the battle, this is one of the first ghost stories from Gettysburg. The farmer, his name was Forney, and he tried to get his people to work out there, and they would come in and they say, we're not going to work out there at the pits anymore. And he's like, why not? Well, we're hearing strange things. We're hearing shouts. We're hearing orders being called. We're hearing drums. We're hearing bugles. We're hearing screams out there. And they just wouldn't work out there. And so it's been known ever since as a very haunted area. And in fact, one of my fellow ghost hunters, paranormal investigators, was out there, and she had a recording going, and they were not picking up very much until the very end when it was getting around closing time for the park. And she said, well, I got to say goodbye to these guys. So she said, God be with you. But she left the recorder going, and she got this recording of a long, drawn-out human scream you can hear fading off into the distance. So maybe she picked up on some of that, the horror that was out there 100 and some years ago, using what we call EVP, the electronic voice phenomenon, that seemed to be a remnant electromagnetically of what occurred at the site.
Mark, what is your idea, or what are your opinions on spirit energy compared to residual energy?
Well, I think it all goes under the umbrella of spirit energy, but we have classified different types of hauntings, and residual is one of them. And that would be like for example, the Phantom Regiment, where the same thing has been seen over and over and over and over again, like a I guess a DVD being played over and over. I gotta be careful. I used to say it like a
VHS
video. That's outdated now.
A beta.
Or in my case, an 8-track. But that's a residual haunting. But there are other types of hauntings. Another one would be an intelligent haunting or interactive haunting. That's where kind of frighteningly, that's where the ghost actually acknowledges you, sees you, and may speak to you. An example of that was one of the first ghost stories I heard. We were at the information desk, and it was 8 a.m. It was very early, and a woman came in. And the first thing she asked was, she said, are there any ghosts here at Gettysburg? And we're like, well, why? What happened? She said, I was out at Devil's Den, once again, one of those famous places out there. She says, about 2 hours ago, the park had just opened. I was the only one there. And I kind of got turned around and lost. And so I figured it's a beautiful morning. I'll get out of my car and take a picture. She said, I was standing on top of the rock, and this huge rock, and I had my camera up to my eye. And all of a sudden, I got that feeling that somebody was there with me. She said, so I turned around, and there was a man standing there, maybe 10 or 15 feet away from me. And he looked at me, he said, what you're looking for is over there, and pointed at the direction I'd been pointing the camera. She said, I turned, and then I'm like, well, wait a minute, how does he know what I'm looking for? She said, I turned back, and he had vanished. He disappeared. There's nowhere for him to go. But he just disappeared. And we asked her, what did he look like? And she said, well, she said he was kind of ragged. He had bare feet. His clothes were kind of ripped and ragged. He had a floppy hat and shoulder-length hair and a beard. Well, the interesting part is she described a soldier from the Texas Brigade that fought at Devil's Den, that actually captured Devil's Den. They were, Texas was on the fringes of the southern states, and so uniforms, when they wore out early in the war, they couldn't replace them very quickly, and so a lot of the Texans were in kind of ragged shape barefoot by the time they got to Gettysburg. So that to me is very interesting. But also interesting is if you fast forward up to maybe just a couple of years ago, I was doing an autographing at a place, and a woman came in, and she said, I had a strange experience with a strange looking guy out at Devil's Den. I said, stop right there. I said, did you read my books? She goes, no, I haven't read them yet. She said, I hope to one of these days, but I haven't. I said, well, go ahead. She said, I'm standing there, and I was kind of in a little reverie. I looked down at my feet. I was looking at the pretty blue flowers, just kind of daydreaming, and all of a sudden I felt like I was being looked at, and I looked up, and there was a man standing there in front of me. And he looked at me, and he pointed at my sweatshirt, and he said, First Texas. And I looked down, she said, and sure enough, I had like a University of Texas sweatshirt on, and it said Texas across it. And then I looked up, and he was gone. He just vanished in the short period of time that I looked down at my shirt. I said, well, what did he look like? She said, well, he was kind of ragged looking. He looked like a bum, barefoot, ragged pants, floppy hat, shoulder length hair. I'm like, okay, well, that here 20 some years later, and this other woman sees virtually the same thing, describes the same thing that the first woman saw. So those types of things really interest me when I get that kind of information.
Oh yeah, because that's definitely not residual. That is a communicative entity that just hasn't crossed over. And
exactly,
why? Who knows? You'd almost have to get a psychic in there to ask. Do you ever do that? Do you have psychics come in to try to communicate with these people?
We do work with psychics. We work with sensitives. We're also trying to in our we have certain weekends that we invite people in to investigate certain areas. They stay at a haunted B&B, and then we'll take them to places. We teach them how to do a paranormal investigation, and then we will take them to various places where they can practice. One of the things we're starting to do more and more in the last 4 or 5 years is do something that we call intuition forward. We try and sensitize them a little bit or get them sensitive to their feelings. It seems kind of counterproductive to me and I know all the TV programs do this, the teams on the TV programs, to walk around a place with instruments and you're trying to bump into a ghost. Is basically what we're trying to do, kind of using sheer luck. What we're trying to do is get the people to say, okay, I feel that there's something over there, and I want to investigate over there. And then use the instruments as backup. For example, someone says, I'm feeling really, really cold. My right arm is really cold. That's when you put the thermal scanner on them. And yes, indeed, your arm is much colder than the 98.6 degrees it's supposed to be, or whatever the skin temperature is supposed to be. And, we do that. Or when they say, there's something, I feel over there, that's when you take in put in the electromagnetic, the EMF meters, like the K2 meter, things like that. So that's what we're trying to do, is get people a little more sensitive to their own feelings and following those.
And that's what we're supposed to be anyway. We're supposed to be a little bit more enlightened and understand that, when you get goosebumps or the hair on the back of your neck stands up, you're supposed to be paying attention to that. And
yeah, that's what I think.
I had a woman spirit walk through me from back to front, and wow. We always, and probably like you guys, you never go out and buy the $2,000 EMF meter, because you will get electromagnetic results from putting it up against a human body or close to a wall with a wire in it. You do the cheap ghost stop ones, the ones that it's going to take a lot of EMF to actually light that thing up. Well, she walked through me, and imagine goosebumps down your entire back, and then feeling them go through all the organs of your body out the front, and have an EMF meter go off as it's going, as you're holding it to your body. That was kind of creepy. Really nice lady, though. Yeah. She came back. She kissed me twice on the cheek.
Oh my!
And it was just like a pinprick goosebump that expanded into about a 3-inch round field of goosebumps on my cheek. and then did it twice.
Wow.
And I just looked at my partner who was there videotaping. I said, Mike, she just kissed me twice. And he goes, cool, I got it on film. The EMF going off as it's going by through your body. It is that great time if we can get people just to pay attention to it, especially in a place like Gettysburg where there was just so much activity and so much lost spirits, guys who haven't crossed, guys who are looking for a friend, they're still trying to hold the hill they took back in the day because that was their job, or they just don't understand they've passed.
Sometimes that's it. Yeah.
Our paranormal group, we're kind of one of the most hated ones around. We actually cross them over. So we'll go to a location and we'll get some good EVPs and we'll get some good discussions. And we have a psychic with us who says, would you like to cross? And if they say yes, we work on crossing them over, which really ticks off the next group who wants to come and get good EVPs and some. And we're saying, sorry, they're gone. Bye-bye. It's like,
yeah.
And see, that would be a kind of, it would be hard to do at Gettysburg because it would be like, basically going to a Pittsburgh Steelers game and asking every single person in the audience saying, hey, who wants to cross? And you'll never get to the end of it. There'll be thousands of them. And that's not, I think, our job. I think there is reasons that they're staying back. And there are some that we ask to cross and they won't cross because they're busy. They're having fun, or, some of these might be attracted to the energy of the tourists that show up too.
Well, we've had similar situations where some just are afraid to cross over. They don't recognize anything, and they're afraid of judgment in particular because they were, when they were alive, they were Victorians, they were Christians, and they knew that they were sinning when they pulled the trigger. And others that are just like, they don't know they're dead. One of our psychics asked one, well, what when you look down at yourself, what do you see? What do you look like? He said, I look like, I did when I was alive. I have a uniform on and I look like you. And she said, well, doesn't it bother you when no one around here will talk to you? And, because they can't hear you? He says, no, I just figure they don't want to talk to me. Sometimes that happens. Now, we have a tendency to think of these people or these spirits, well, they're still people, I suppose, and wonder, well, why wouldn't they get bored after a long time? Well, there's no such thing as time.
No.
Time to us is important because one day we're going to die. Well, that's over for them. You know what I mean? So the watch doesn't mean anything to them. And so they have that timelessness about them. And they didn't want to talk to me. That's okay. I'm not in a hurry to talk to them and get out. But yeah, so that's we've crossed them over. Sometimes they don't want to cross. Sometimes it's like, can we cross you over? And they're like, what's that? Well, you see the light over there? Can you see your mom or your dad or your brother over there? Oh yeah. Well, you can go. Okay, bye. Boom.
Yeah. Yeah, they just didn't know that that's what they were supposed to do. That's like we run into a lot of children's spirits because if their mom and dad are still alive, even their grandparents might be alive, the little one passes and a great grandmother shows up and says, "Come with me, Billy." And Billy's like, "Oh, stranger danger. I'm not going anywhere near you, lady. I don't know who you are." And there's that certain amount of time you have, and then it kind of dims out, and it's you'll have to be crossed over, or something else is going to have to happen to open that access. But we run into a lot of little kids that way. Hopefully, the majority of everyone who passes gets crossed over, but there are those few, which keeps us busy as paranormal investigators. Have you been called off the park to do any investigations locally?
Yeah, just 3 weeks ago. In fact, the guy was just up the street from where my building is there, and he apparently had he's trying to track down. He had one of two people die in his upstairs there. It's obviously a historic building. It was there at the time of the battle, and he invited me over. And sure enough, he's got blood stains. What I thought were blood stains. At least we haven't done a full test on him. I have some luminol type material that I can use, but I think this might be a little bit old. It may not be. I don't know. But we're going to try that one of these days and identify it as blood protein. And but it did illuminate to some extent under a UV light. But he's had some things that have happened. So I got some EVP there, the electronic voice phenomenon, and I loaned him a little device that might pick up some EMF if he puts it in the right place. So yes, in other words, we've done many investigations, basically all over the country. I wrote a book called Civil War Ghost Trails, and got to go to all the major battlefields in the country. And
nice.
And whenever I was there, I tried to do at least a mini investigation, try and get some EVP or something there, and actually got the EVP we couldn't put in the book. How do you put places in a book? But my wife came up with the idea. She said, "Why don't we create a web page, and people who read your book can go to that web page, because most people have a computer nearby, and they can listen to what you got." I said, "That's good. They don't have to take my word for it. They can hear it." So I've gotten EVP and photos and things like that from many other Civil War battlefields. We've been down in New Orleans and done some investigating there, and out to Ohio. Did some investigating out there at some battlefields. So
that's great. Now, we are talking to Mark Nesbitt of Gettysburg Ghost Hunters. Go to his website, ghostsofgettysburg.com. Go to our store. Go down to the book, Civil War Ghost Trails. If you click on that, while you're there, add it to your cart. But if you, at the bottom of the paragraph, there's a little link that says Mark's blog. If you click on that, it'll take you to the EVP that we're talking about, that he got, and we were just mentioning. Again, we are talking to Mark Nesbitt. We're going to be back with more from Mark after our 7-minute stretch. Talk to you in a minute.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on 2 mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. 2 mediums and a large. Heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, they're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month, where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick Webster Small, and I'm here to bring you the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night, live at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for aliens and extraterrestrials, well, we've got them. Big and tall, short and small. You're bound to find what you're looking for, so join me on the Webster Phenomena right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Reveal Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings, no matter where you are. It's time for you to make time for you.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Tonight's edition of Spaced Out Weekend is brought to you by spacedoutradio.com, where you can now sign up to become a Space Traveler member. Now, for the final time tonight, here's Spaced Out Weekend's James Tyson.
Welcome back, everybody. And it is I,
James Tyson, broadcasting from my little log cabin on the 13th floor of the Spaced Out Radio Network here in the paranormal portals of the Canadian lower left coast, or what I'd like to call Cascadia, up here in the Pacific Northwest, where it is hopefully spring soon. We are talking to Mark Nesbitt down in Gettysburg. You have a lot of snow down there?
No, they keep threatening us with snow, but we haven't had any. I mean, the dire warnings that we're going to get all of 2 or 3 inches and nothing happens. So in your area and your experience, one of the things that I needed to ask you about is your protection. How do you go home at night? How do you sleep at night? How do you get home without bringing half a dozen of these things with you that want to, befriend you? And well, it has some prayer protection, and as my wife said, doesn't matter what religion you are, you can ask whatever God you believe in to protect you, and that's basically what we do. I have never really had a problem, and I think it maybe just my thought. It may stem from the fact that I was a historian at one time. I think I understand these fellows pretty well. I've read their diaries. I've written about them time and time again. I admire them so much that it's just, I'm in awe of what they did and what any veteran really can do in battle. And I know how horrible it was. And so I just have an admiration for these men and their spirits. So I seem to be able to get along with them fairly well. I think these malevolent spirits or demons that everybody on TV now wants to run into, I think those are pretty few and far between. Now, that having been said, bad people die too. I mean, I wouldn't want to run into Adolf Hitler just because, but bad people die too. And so there may be some, there's a theory that we retain our personalities into the other world. And I certainly there's some people I wouldn't want to run into for the most part. I mean, look at your life. Most of the people you've run into, and there are a few rotten apples, but most of the people you get along with and you're fine with. I know some people have taken spirits home from Gettysburg. One story that stands out is a married couple who lived in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which is only about 25, 30 miles north, had been to the battlefield one day. It's just a day trip for them. They were kind of kidding around, and they invited one of the spirits, one of the ghosts of Gettysburg, to come back with them to Carlisle. Well, they got home, and things started happening in their house. Everything, weird stuff. One of the weirdest was that they found a wastebasket that had been placed in the middle of their bed. And obviously neither one of them had done that. And they're like, do you think it's possible that we brought a ghost back with us? And they were like laughing about it. I said, well, you know what? Maybe we should take him back. So the next weekend, they were out in their driveway, and they said, okay, you can come on back. We're going down to Gettysburg. You can go back. They opened the back door and they closed it and got back to Gettysburg, opened the door and said, okay, you're back here. You can stay here. We'd rather you stay here than come with us. Closed the door, drove back to Carlisle, and didn't have anything happen to them after that. They had no more weird experiences in their home. So I think why not? If people invite you to go someplace, why not go with them?
Yeah, it could be a higher energy couple. They've grabbed onto that energy. You've opened the door.
Right.
It's amazing they didn't get more. Like there's probably a lineup of them out there. I brought one home. My listener knows I brought a fellow home because I just got too lazy to clear myself. And I retired from the mounted police. And the day before, I was on my way to the airport to pick up my daughter. And I went through a little town that's between here, not a little town, it's a city between here where I live and the airport. And I saw, anyway, I ended up arresting somebody. I was helping a local police detain someone. It was right beside an extremely haunted location, an old train station from the 1800s. My adrenaline spiked. I'm kind of a higher energy person anyway. I had huge sleep paralysis where I was being held down. This thing would come over top of me and growl, and I usually get those things off within seconds. A little meditation and a punch to their chest, and you almost can hear them fly across the room. There was no way I was getting this thing off. The next day, I got a hold of a psychic friend and said, oh, no, you had 3 of them. When your adrenaline spiked, that was like a dinner bell. Because you were open, you're walking around with that part of you open up. So all 3 of them came home with you, and they were feeding off your fear. So David, Michael, and Andrew, those are the 3 that came home with me. Andrew was the bit of a jerk, but we spent the next night crossing them all over because They weren't wanting to leave my property here for the longest time. We pushed them out. Michael and David were fine with it. Andrew was in the road outside the house, staring at the house with a grumpy look on his face, she said. But we talked them into crossing over. Again, like you were saying, they thought they had done something in life that would preclude them from crossing over. They thought they were going to go to hell. We had to explain to them, there's that little checkbox that you explain that's like, if you think you're going to go to hell, then you agree there's a hell. Therefore, you must believe in God. And if you believe in Jesus, and then you've checked that box, well, if you believe in Jesus, then you have to believe that God sacrificed his only son for our sins. Why would he do that if you're going to go to hell if you believe in Jesus? So we took them through the circle, and they all crossed over. They went, oh, that's how that works? Off they went.
That's great, yeah.
So it was just kind of getting that through their ethereal skulls, and off they went. But that's bringing something home. My energy's been increasing, and I have to be very, very conscious now to protect myself if I'm going anywhere that's around any of these things. Heck, even going on a hike in this area, there's would be Canadian Indian settlements that were around here up to 300-400 years ago. So who knows what's walking around. In your case, you've got all these guys just wandering around looking for a ride. Some don't want to leave. Some do want to leave. Some are happy when the cute girl shows up with her family, and maybe they're going to tag along with her. You've got soldiers that from 14 years old up. So
right. Well, and we have had situations where we've had groups into our building. The soldiers seem very, very upset, and when we talk to them, it's because one of the young ladies is wearing shorts. Yeah. Okay. And then a tank top. And it's just, you just didn't show that much skin back in those days. And they were all upset. They thought we had brought some sort of a woman of ill repute in. It's just a young girl who's the way they dress now. We've also had a situation, you just reminded me of one very similar to yours, where we have in our building, we have resident spirits and also visiting spirits that periodically come in, and then we can't get in touch with them again. But one of the people that we've identified there is Mrs. Kitzmiller. Their family owned the house longest of anyone from 1866 to 1914. She is there, and we have spoken with her. I've gotten EVP. She's very feisty. And one day, one of our mediums was in. She's like, Mrs. Kitzmiller is really upset. She's like yelling at me. And so she's finally communicating with her, and she said there's a little Italian lady who is in her kitchen, and the kitchen was upstairs. So she went, the medium went over and basically asked the woman to leave, and she left. Half an hour later, coincidentally, another one of our mediums walked into the door, and she looked at us. She says, "Who's that little Italian lady on the corner?" She didn't. She got out of the house, but she didn't know where to go. She didn't leave, so she's just the little Italian lady's just standing out there looking, just kind of like your beard, who was just kind of looking at the house. So that's an interesting coincidence that we had the same experience, basically.
Yeah, that's weird, though, isn't it? That we interact with these spirits so often without knowing about it.
Yeah, I don't know about it. Like I said, I'm not that sensitive. But I have had experiences. You reminded me of one when I was doing an investigation down at a place called the Chimneys down in Fredericksburg, Virginia, another Civil War battle site. This building goes back to the 1700s, probably because Fredericksburg was an area on the route of the Underground Railroad, which was not a railroad, but it was that went underground, but it was the escape route for slaves when they were trying to leave Virginia. And it was right on the Rappahannock River, which empties into the Chesapeake Bay, which once they got to the rivers, they were pretty much free. They could hide themselves on boats, and the slaves could escape that way. And this building, the Chimneys, was right, you could see the river from it. So we were in the cellar, and I was there with one of my mediums, and she had contacted a guy, and she wasn't actually channeling him, but she was repeating what he was saying, and it was kind of broken English. And his name was Nicodemus. She got that, but he kept saying, not my name, just what they call me, waiting for Miss Hattie. Miss Hattie bring papers? Then we can leave. So we kind of assumed that he was, you know, a runaway slave, and he was waiting for fake papers that would get him someplace. She said he looks like he has kind of like a withered arm. And then she goes, no, I strong. I picked that up. She said he's pointing to that big box over there. Then she said, why don't you tell him that he can leave? Now, I had a recorder going because I was trying to get EVP. And I said, you don't have to stay here any longer, Nicodemus. It's the war is over. The slaves have been free. You're a free man. And all of a sudden, I had shirt sleeves on. My right arm just froze. It was like ice cold. And I didn't want to say anything because I had the recorder going. And finally, I shut the recorder off. And our medium, Julie, looks at me. She says, did you feel that? I said, what? She said, he just went in between us and left. So sure enough, I hadn't even said anything to her, but there's an independent confirmation that I had a spirit, go right across my arm, and she had seen him leave. So it's kind of interesting, when you compare experiences, like your experiences, my experiences, and other people's, how very similar they are.
Yeah.
You would think if people are making these things up, they wouldn't be very, very similar. They're all alike, but not a lot alike.
And these things go back, 100 years. Yes, paranormal has been a little bit. It's been in the media for the last 10 years. We're getting a little more. Thank goodness, it's becoming more acceptable to talk about this kind of stuff. But there are books, on the back shelves of old bookstores that were written in the 1930s, and they have the same type of stories in them, but no one really cared back then. It is kind of an odd phenomenon now that more and more people are accepting that there is something different, and there is something after death that we can either look forward to or not, I guess, but there is something else there.
People are accepting it more. I remember in 1991 when I did my first book, it took me about 10 years to collect all the stories that I would make up a book. And it came out, and within 2 weeks of it coming out, the first Ghost of Gettysburg, I started getting phone calls and letters from people. This was before Twitter or anything else, email, and the people were basically saying, my neighbors are wrong, I'm not crazy. Here's what happened to me at Gettysburg. I tried to tell somebody, but they thought I was nuts. And so they would tell me their stories, and I still get letters from people. They don't always say, I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't want people to think I was crazy. They don't say that anymore, but they do still send me experiences that they've had on the battlefield and in the town too. The town was also battlefield.
Yeah, the friend of mine, she's an author, Sharon Day, lives in Arizona now, but when she was a little kid, she wrote a book called Growing Up with Ghosts. She talks about her family living in a 250-year-old house in Northern Virginia that was on a Civil War battlefield, where the house itself was a like the medical hospital or the battle hospital as the tide shifted in the battle. So it was Union at one time, Confederate at another time. And her bedroom, the wooden floor in her bedroom has bloodstains because that was part of it. As a very sensitive young lady, and I mean sensitive like being psychic, she grew up thinking everyone else had soldiers from Civil War in their house. And she just thought, if nobody else is talking to them, maybe I shouldn't talk to them either. But they'd follow around, and they'd acknowledge she was there. And her mother worked at one of the Smithsonian branches, and they would find Civil War memorabilia and the battlefield stuff, as well as American Indian bits and pieces. And her mom had it all in a cabinet. And Sharon is a psychometrist. She could touch something and tell you about who owned it. and what was going. And she used to touch things and tell her mom, and her mom said, "Oh, just leave that alone, leave that alone." But that is, I think her house was actually in a television show once. They were focusing on the blood on the floor of this old place, because I think now it's a historic site because it was on the battlefields. But you know, I'm going to say she's in her late 20s now. No, this would be about maybe 50 years ago she lived in the house. So back before this was common.
Do you remember what battlefield it was?
No, and you know what? I just I bounced over to just on Amazon to see if it mentioned it, and it didn't. It just says a 250-year-old house in Northern Virginia. But yeah, it was, and I was going to. During the interview, I was going to text her, going, "Sharon, what? I'm talking to Mark. He's a battlefield guy. He might have been to your house, so who knows? I'll probably get that for you later when we're off air. Okay. I'll get that to you, because she's a very, very cool lady, very, very cool lady, and has been bouncing around with ghosts ever since she was a kid. She even has a book about vacationing with ghosts because their vacation home was also haunted." What is your take on death? What do you think happens to us after our meat sack shuts down?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I look at death as an opening door, not a closing door. I think the illusion is not what goes on afterwards, but what we're dealing with now. I think this is I think we are not bodies with spirits, but spirits with bodies. Mm-hmm. And the spirits go on. The bodies, obviously, it's just, it's like a building. It's like flesh and blood. It's going to crumble one of these days. And But I believe that the energy from our spirit continues. The fact that we get EMF recordings or EMF indications from the places that are haunted and from spirits, I think tell us a little something about it. I'm not sure if it's necessarily electromagnetic energy that is retained in the surroundings. It may be something that sets off the electromagnetic field meters. I'm not sure, but I do know that that there are enough indicators now anymore between EVP, between psychics, between the scientific devices that we've been using, and that there's something that's going on that we are just very, very close to finding out what it is, and we may never find out what it is. I don't, we've been looking at this for a long, long time. Humans have been burying their dead with items for the next world, food, weapons, things like that, for almost 100,000 years. I always wonder what told those proto-humans to, all right, this, they're going to need something, when they go on. And, maybe one of them came back and said, there is another world beyond this one. So the next one of us you bury, give them something to take with them.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, but I know there's something going on. It's just not visible, or to some of us, and to me at any rate.
So when I die, or maybe when you die, are you going to take your golf clubs with you, or?
No, definitely not the golf clubs. That's too frustrating.
Your spirit comes back and say, I left the 3-wood. If anyone else is dying soon, could I get you to bring a case of Coke and some of those Krispy Kreme donuts, because really needed a sugar high once I got to the other side here. It's
all I can say is if I die and I get down on a golf club, you're sitting there, I'm saying I didn't make it to heaven. I get to play golf for all the eternity the way I play.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Oh, God's up there going, what? Where's all that swearing coming from?
Right.
Guy at the gate's going, oh, that's Mark. Somebody brought him golf clubs. Okay. Give Mark the fishing rod. We're going to take the golf.
Yeah,
something relaxing. Again, we're talking to Mark Nesbitt. It's a very cool thing you're doing. Civil War ghost trails. I think I'm going to end up buying that. Go to his website, ghostsofgettysburg.com. ghostsofgettysburg.com, and see what they're up to. This is actually a very, very cool idea to take people through on a tour of Gettysburg. Now, Mark, I got to tell you, I am one of the big proponents and absolute hater of the like the sanitariums that you open up and charge $150 for someone to go through, have a couple of beer and poke at spirits, because those poor bodies have been, abused all their living life. They're trapped on the other side, and now you're going to open it up to a bunch of wannabe ghost hunters, wannabe ghost adventurers who come in and say, "Oh, touch me, and they're poking at them." So I feel like they're just being abused while they're trapped on the other side. Your outfit is different. These are, I would say, thousands of spirits that are either lost or wanting to be there, or just have a choice whether they're going to cross over or not. And you're doing it a little more respectfully. You're not poking at them. You're having conversations with them. You're coming in as a actual paranormal investigator, not a business person trying to make a buck off of the phenomena of paranormal investigations. So I like that. It's a good way to go and open up this type of thing to people who are interested in communicating with the other side.
Well, we do have a lot of those in Gettysburg, and it's sad because there are some when we started our ghost tours, we were the only ones. Of course, I wrap it all around history. All our guides take you to a site, tell you the history, and then tell you the ghost story of that site. But with the kind of ghost tours and ghost adventures and these other where they're going to places at night and doing investigations, so-called investigations. The place in Gettysburg now have started that. What they'll do is they take you, pull out to a place called Sachs Bridge. It is active, and charge you $30 to $60 to take you out there. In the meantime, you get out there, and the place is jam-packed with people who went out there on their own for free. Oh, yeah. So I've always thought that's kind of weird that they would do that type of thing, but that's the nature of the tourism business to Gettysburg. Yeah, we don't do that.
I think anybody now with a digital recorder and a regular camera, let alone a full spectrum or IR camera, can almost go to the middle of a football field and get something. It's just something's changed in the last 7 or 8 years that has made our side easier to connect with the other side. Have you found that possibly too?
Yeah, and I think it has to do a lot with the digitalization of everything from recorders to video to photographs. I think, and it's my theory, and I think I read this somewhere, that for example, the cameras, the still cameras now, in the old days when you're using 35 millimeter film, it would pick up just the visual frequency of the visual spectrum, and it didn't do anything on either end, the ultraviolet or the infrared. Now, the chips in the digital stuff seem to cheat a little bit more on either side, and will pick up the ultraviolet a little wider than what our eyes can pick up. And I think that may have something to do with it. It's also interesting with the recorders, audio recorders. Some of the older ones seem to pick up EVP a little bit better. And I always heard that what had happened is that Panasonic apparently had been getting complaints, and when they first came out with digital recorders, that these were picking up voices and noises that weren't recorded. And so they engineered that out of their second and third generations. So some of the older stuff is a little, but I think it has something to do with the digitalization that, if indeed this energy that we have when we're spirits is a electromagnetic or electromagnetic related energy, it would make sense that it would, you could, as a spirit, you could touch a recorder and it would react just like the old reel-to-reel tape, the magnetic tape, that's what they used to first started picking up EVPs, would react to that. And then again, certain people can actually hear the voices in their heads, and of course that makes sense because we are electromagnetic beings. We're, the sugars and energy that we take in every day for food turns into electromagnetic impulses, and that's why we think. That's why our heart beats and muscles move. So, all kind of fits together a little bit here in terms of that electromagnetic and digitalization, more sensitivity to the instruments that we have now. So that's just my theory. I'm not a scientist, but after doing this for many years and studying it, it seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's I think if we look at some of this stuff too scientifically, the equipment side of things, and if it gets too polished, like I was saying about the EMF meters, if you get a real skookum EMF meter that you would use in a job where you need to find electromagnetic fields, those ones pick up way too much.
Yeah,
you need the $20 little gray plastic one with the lights, because you're not going to get interference from something unless it's really, really strong. And if it's strong enough, if it's a non-spirit EMF that you're picking up, you're going to see it. You're going to see the big metal thing connected to the wall, and you're going to get something from that. So you know to discount it. But literally, you're standing in the middle of a field and all of a sudden the thing lights up. That's a clue. As a policeman, I would think that's a clue.
Right.
Because it just doesn't happen like that.
I also think that we sell ourselves short on this, in that we have a big input on our success in getting EVP or photographs. And it sounds silly, but a lot of times people get better results when they just ask, do you mind if I take a picture? So they sound silly to them because they're talking to nobody, but when they do, they seem to get better results. I know that after doing getting EVP in my building, because I'll do this when we have our guests in, and I will after about 45 minutes, James, I am wasted. I am so tired. I'm exhausted because they seem to need to borrow energy to communicate and or to appear or to make noises or whatever. And so when I'm after about 45 minutes to an hour, I'm ready for bed.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted.
And that's something that you have to be careful of. If your energy and vibration drops to a certain point, you can be manipulated a little easier.
I agree.
Yeah, you can. We had a investigation where a young couple moved into an old house, and like you say, the same personality as they had on this side, but the old guy in the house did not like women. He would swear at the young lady, call her all sorts of names, and lovely young couple. And one day, the young woman came home, and the husband was there, and he wasn't feeling that well, but he stayed home from work. But his eyes had changed, and he got in an argument and started slapping her around. Got arrested for domestic violence. Came back and completely back to normal, and apologized and said, I don't know what came over me. And it happened twice. So here's a guy. Imagine me as a policeman going to court saying, you know what, I really think this, he was sick, his vibration dropped, and the creepy spirit in the house manipulated him into slapping his wife around.
Wow.
Buddy still would have gone to jail, and I'd be escorted out the back door in a white jacket with the sleeves that tie at the back. And but now I look at those things and say, oh, okay, you can be manipulated. And, I've seen, alcoholics or drug-dependent people who a complete change in personality when they start doing something that's violent or something completely out of their character, sober, and then the next day saying, I have no idea what happened. I blacked out. And we always blame, it's the alcohol, or you've got mental health issues or a drug psychosis. And now I kind of raise an eyebrow and kind of think, okay, where were you and what did you bring into your life? And
right.
Glad I retired, actually. I'd be overthinking too much stuff. I was going to ask you about your uniform. Let's go back to when you were on the horse, dressed as a Union person. Ever have any issues around spirits of Confederates that you think of, like your horse got a little bit spooked for no apparent reason? Or anything obvious?
Not really. But he used to get spooked a lot, but that's just because he was really smart. On everything. And he'd walk past a gate, 100 times, and then finally the 101st time he'd see it, and he'd be like, "Whoa, it's trying to eat me," and try and take off. But no, he was just really a smart animal, and I don't know if animals will, focus on stuff, and he would turn his head and focus on something. And I couldn't see it, but maybe I would just say, well, it's just my eyesight or something. But who knows? Maybe he was seeing something.
Or maybe something on the 101st time, something was coming through the gate.
Yes,
you could see, and you couldn't. Yeah, because there you are in a battlefield, dressed in period costume, on a horse in an area where a lot of Confederate. Like if you're up at the point where the 1st Texas was. You may have bumped into Buddy a little bit more. You may have ended up seeing him.
Well, I did spend a lot of time. When the crowds would leave, they'd all take off, and I'd be out there by myself, dressed in a Confederate uniform or a Union uniform. I did Confederate infantry for a while too. But I always had a pleasant feeling, because I was telling the story. I think the way that they wanted it told, and. So, I just got a good feeling when I was out there. Never a scary feeling. It was always it was never bad. It was always good.
Oh, maybe you drew a crowd around you of guys, quote unquote, on your side, who kind of protected you on the other side from being harassed by spirits. What is your feeling on spirit guides?
Well, now my wife is the one to talk to about that, because I can relate some of the things that she's had. I probably have them, but I don't talk to them very frequently. She talks to hers a lot, and they give her good advice. And maybe I do talk to mine a little bit more, because when I do get into a meditative state or pray or whatever, I do get an answer for my questions. And so as far as guides are concerned, as far as I'm personally am concerned, I don't utilize them very much, but I know that others use them quite a bit. And Carol's one of them, and also some of our mediums. Well, they all of our mediums.
They all would,
Spirit guides.
Well, you have to, like, one person's prayer is another person's meditation. You're asking a higher power for advice or guidance. And I've always put it this way, that, there's Jesus and there's God. I don't go to Bill Gates to get my computer fixed. I go to some tech that it's his job to fix it. And that's kind of where my guides are at, I believe. They're the first line. Then you can get up into the archangels, and then if the defecation hits the rotary oscillator, you can bump it up into upper management pretty quick. But it is one of those things. You can check in. If And to me, they're the ones that ran they run the goosebumps, and they run the hair on the back of your neck standing up. So, that's where we as humans mostly have our communication with them. All of a sudden you turn left instead of right, and you're going, geez, why did I turn left? And then you come across something you were supposed to come across, or you avoided the bridge blowing up or something. But you don't know why you did it. Now I look back at those events in my life as a policeman, and I go, oh, that's why I made the mistake, but that kept me out of trouble.
Right.
And, that's kind of where I fall into that. And they're the ones who probably were helping you along too, as you're interacting with a lot of these invisible forces. They're kind of looking over your shoulder for you, making sure that maybe the ugly ones don't, the Hitlers don't come along home with you.
Well, I have no doubt I've been helped a number of times. I just subconsciously requested the help and got it, or just someone's looking out for me. I have no doubt that's happened. I've stayed out of. In my younger days, before I got married, there are many, many situations I could have gotten in that could have ended up pretty badly, but never did. But
bless us as teenagers.
I'm preaching to the choir out there. Everybody has been in that. I
think it was lemon gin. I think that was some kind of evil thing that was given everybody. Where you're going now, like you say, you've got another book on the run. Is it you write fiction too, don't you?
Yeah, actually, I've written several bits of fiction, pieces of fiction, novels, but I'm really working on one now to get it out because I've been so busy with other things. I finished. I did a book with Patty Wilson, who is another author, called Cursed in Pennsylvania. I just finished Cursed in Virginia on my own. So that's with a different publisher. I've just signed a contract to do another book. I'll tell you, the ones that you remind me of, though, are the haunted crime scenes books that I did with Catherine Ramsland, who is a forensics professor at DeSales University and a consultant on bones and CSI. And she came up with a thought, what happens when the CSIs, crime scene investigators, run out of evidence, and the case grows cold? Can you bring in PFIs, paranormal forensic investigators, to kind of do their thing, do a paranormal investigation, crime scene, use their techniques, psychometry, remote viewing, the EVP, to try and get more information to move the crime forward again. One of our consultants on the books was Greg McCrary, from the former FBI profiler. And I asked him flat out, and it's in the book, Greg, would you, if a paranormal investigator came up to you and said, I think I might have another lead on this, would you take it? He said, absolutely. We'll do anything to solve a crime. Now, this stuff is not necessarily admissible, but on the level that you operated, and I operated, and Greg McCrary operated, if I can get another lead and move this investigation a little bit forward, I'm going to do it. And and that's turning into weekends now. We have picked out a crime, a fairly famous crime. That's a cold case has been a cold case for 60 years, 70 years now in Pennsylvania. And we're going to have people stay at a haunted B&B. We're going to teach them the techniques that we can use doing an investigation at this crime scene. Then we're going to take them to the crime scene and see if they can come up with anything.
That's coming up the end of March, early April?
Early April, yeah. We have 2 weekends plotted out for that. And one weekend is already full, and we've got a second weekend that we're going to work on. But we're going to, this is the first time we've done this. We've done other weekends, but it's just investigating, ghost investigations. This is going to be for a purpose, to try and move these investigations out of the cold case into warming up a little bit here.
I have a number of my friends who are psychics. Robbie Thomas up in Canada here. He travels all through the U.S. and Canada. opening up cold cases. Marianne Morgan was hired by Natalie Holloway's family, the young girl that got murdered.
Sure.
She's done a number of them. Lizette Larkins, Jenny Bergen. She actually worked for the federal government at one point. They all worked they've been all called in on investigations with local police forces on active serial murderers, serial rapists. Where the investigation stalls, then they start providing more information. Some really cool old TV series out of Canada up here called the Psychic Investigators, where they focused on a few of these historical events. Not historical, but where the psychic investigator was actually used to forward the investigation. And I know of one in the United States where there was a missing family member, and I think it was in Louisiana, and one of their friends phoned a psychic in California. She said, tell them they have to start driving south right now. Tell them to get on whatever highway and start heading to a specific town. So they did. And as they're driving down the highway, wondering why they're supposed to do this, they see their brother's truck on the highway, and it's being driven by somebody they don't know. They end up following it down a dead-end road. And this is where it gets even weirder. They go on this long, drawn-out road. It gets to the end, turns around, faces them, and then takes off. And it passes a police car that's just up the road. Well, the family that followed the truck down there didn't see a police car when they were going down the road, but the truck gets pulled over. They arrest the people inside for possession of a stolen vehicle. They later admit to killing the brother.
Oh, wow.
So imagine these guys are now being tried as murderers. It goes to the court. The first question the court wants to know is, why were you guys driving down the highway looking for your brother? How did you know to drive down that highway at that time of night? So they had to point towards, well, so-and-so called a psychic who told us to. So now you've got to bring this psychic in to say, this is what I saw and this is what I told them. Because you have to kind of go right to the beginning of what got them going. So it was the first time information from a psychic investigator was allowed in court in the U.S. That was only, I think it was about 10 years ago, and I believe it was in Louisiana. And that was kind of fascinating. That was kind of nice that the district attorney and the judge and the defense allowed it to happen, because that kind of proves that it has a place in jurisprudence. So that was kind of cool.
Well,
Darn if I can remember her name.
It was my understanding is the Salem witch trials all the way back into the 1600s that made us discredit psychic information.
Yeah.
Now, that's silly, because obviously that was, there's so many reasons why the Salem witch trials came to be, that you shouldn't really, with accredited psychic, you should really not let that, be excluded. I don't think, at any rate. I think what happened there is probably a good thing.
Yeah, the whole Puritan idea of what a witch is, and all you had to do is if you didn't like the girl who lived next door because she was eyeballing your man, she's a witch, and eventually everyone would jump on the bandwagon and burn her at the stake. It was stupid. Those people, why I oughta come down there and give them a smack. It is fascinating, and it's particularly when I interview these psychic investigators. It is very interesting on what they can see. Some of them, I talked to a few who have to tell the family, because a lot of them are hired by the family to say, well, I want to find my brother. Can you help me? And they can say, well, I'm sorry, your brother is passed. And they say, well, where's the body? He will be found, but it's not going to be for another 7 years, and he's going to be found by a couple, because it's their path It is their journey to come across the body. So we can't go out and find him now. He will be found. He's in a good place, but it's not time to discover the body. And that's fascinating to me, that kind of stuff.
Well, the psychics that we use, sometimes some will come in to Gettysburg. I've had a couple that are very, very sensitive. They've been on television, as a matter of fact, and they've come in, and I saw one absolutely shut down completely. I was taking him on a battlefield tour, and we got basically to the first day, and he just was. It almost was like a look of panic. And this is a guy who exorcised demons. And I said, Rob, what's the matter? He says, get me out of here. I can't take this. They're seeing stuff that, they're seeing it all. Men being shot down and blown to pieces and stuff like that. They just shut down. And that happened to Patty Wilson, who is not only my co-author, but also a medium at a place called the Bloody Angle at Spotsylvania. She started telling me what she was seeing, individuals, and then all of a sudden it just overwhelmed her. And she says, get me out of here. I just can't take this anymore. So it's, I'm kind of glad I'm not sensitive. I couldn't have lived in Gettysburg for as long as I did if I had been. Or
if you grew up with it, maybe it, you also, if you're that sensitive, you're also going to be hooked into your spirit guides a lot more. And if you know that they are actually out there to help you, then you throw a little bit more strength out. It's absolutely amazing how these things work, and it's one of those things that I'd like to experience. Just getting out to a place like Gettysburg and be out there.
Right.
Oh, it was. That's the wolves at the door. And hopefully the wolf will stop in a second here. Stand by. Yeah, we were talking about pups, and we'll be good. Everything's okay.
Okay. We have dogs too, so.
Yeah, it's. Hold on a second here. I just had it. He's grumping at me.
Oh, now, yeah.
Your dog, is that Merlin?
Yeah, Merlin. Yeah, he's we're puppy raisers for a local service dog organization. So we're raising Merlin right now. But we also have Onyx. We adopted Onyx. Yeah,
Onyx?
She flunked out of the system, but we adopted her. So she
good for you. Good for you. My Veterans Motorcycle Group, when we do any of the fundraising, we raise the money for a thing up in Canada here called the Citadel Canine Society, where we take rescue dogs and train them as service dogs for the military and first responders with PTSD. Good for you.
Well, that's another reason why I kind of, we love animals and I love dogs, and that's kind of another reason why I collect as many animal stories about the ghosts of Gettysburg as I can. There are also stories about people hearing horses trotting by, or animals in the horses snorting, and in places that there are no horses, things like that. So I collect those as well as the dog stories, and they're surprisingly large number of stories about animals that are picking up on something, and no one can really tell why. I think maybe their eyes are a little bit better than ours into the two spectrums, the ultraviolet and infrared. And some other people said it's also possibly because the electromagnetism from the spirits, with all that fur, they're a little more sensitive to static electricity and electromagnetism. So they may be feeling it. As a matter of fact, there was a dog that we had a picture of who was, he almost looked like he was kind of going after fleas a little bit. And I took a picture of him, And I don't know what you think about orbs, or whether they're, I'm sure that a lot of them are dust, but I'm also convinced that from what I've experienced that some aren't.
Yeah.
And this kind of showed me, because this dog was reacting, and when I took the picture, there are probably half a dozen orbs all around him, which is, at least I hope they were spirit entities, because that means that even in death we love animals and we like to pat them and get close to them and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So, sir, it is that time. It is that time to say goodbye. We've been
James,
talking.
thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome, Mark. We've been talking to Mark Nesbitt. Remember, go to his website, ghostsofgettysburg.com. Click on our store. See how many books Mark has put together. He and his wife Carol run the walking tours of Gettysburg, and do a lot of cool things like this crime scene weekends that you're putting on. I think you're going to be pretty successful in those. That is quite nice. Oh, Rosemary Kerr, that is the psychic who was in California, who identified that vehicle in Louisiana. Yeah, she was the first one back in the late 80s to actually get drawn into court because of what she saw. Rosemary Kerr. Anyway, back to work, young man, on your books. Okay. And you've got your 2017 season coming up, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. You're probably looking forward to getting back out there and talk to your spirit friends.
Yep, can't wait.
Okay. Again, thanks very much to Mark Nesbitt and Ghost Hunters. And my tongue bouncing off the ground here. It's Ghosts of Gettysburg, and please go to his website, ghostsofgettysburg.com. And for everybody else out there, and all my listener in 160 countries around the world, just please, for goodness sakes, please keep an open mind, and we'll all be happy.
This is our last goodbye. Young hearts will stop. Torn souls set free. All that we have is now. If this is what you want, then come to me.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? They sing and they go. What are those voices? Look over the mountain. Because somebody hide, somebody better hide on through the hill, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. We are after you, dead or alive. We are out to get you, dead or alive. And forget your ghost. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done. Throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man that after now.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Dave's not here!
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Logical.